Welcome back to Good Morning, LaLa. And if you're looking to manifest your mojo this week, you might want to speak to this woman, Dr. Amie Harwick, who she's a licensed marriage and therapy family therapist, but she's really a sex therapist, not going to lie. So how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
So take us to understand, what does it mean to be a sex therapist?
So that's an interesting concept and question, just because a lot of people don't know what it means. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and after that I went to school and got an additional degree in sexuality. Most people don't know that in a program for therapists, a master's program, or even a PhD or PsyD program, there's usually like 1 unit of sexuality education, and all the other classes are 3 units. So it's a third of anything else you're getting educated on. And in the class I took, pretty much, they were like, write a paper on whatever you want about sexuality. Right. And then the teacher wrote, the professor wrote, you should really teach this class. And I'm like, I will. So I'm actually in talks to do exactly that soon.
So interesting.
So it's so minor, like the amount of education. So if you go to a therapist and they haven't sought out additional education or experience in that topic, they really don't know much about sex.
So if someone's going, I think there's kind of like 2 parts to this, right? So there's somebody who might come to a therapist that needs, maybe, that would say they have issues, if you will, and they're trying to overcome maybe some trauma or blocks or whatever it is. And then there's the other side of sexuality, where someone's trying to maybe become more conscious and experience a whole new level of sexuality. So I'm imagining that you primarily work with people who are coming to
you just described like my whole job.
So let's rewind then. Who are your typical patients? Are they people in relationships? Are they singles? And what are you treating them for?
Yeah, so as a licensed marriage and family therapist, I see all kinds of different things. So I just don't talk about sex all day, which some people think I do, but people either come to me because there's a sexuality related thing, or because, you know, anxiety, depression, change of life stuff, breakups, moves, things like that. But then when a person that comes in not for a non-sexuality related thing, and they realize, oh, you wrote this book, and I've seen you on this TV show, or I've looked you up and realized that you write a lot about sexuality, you know, I actually have never told anybody, but, and then I get the disclosure like, I'm a virgin and I'm 30 years old, or I've had this sexual trauma, or I have this kink or fetish that I feel shamed about. So they'll open up to me about those things. So typically a lot of my clients, I think people think because it says marriage and family therapist, which is really just an umbrella license term that means that I can work with couples, married couples, kids, family, individuals. But really, I work mostly with individuals and some couples. Most of my clients are generally younger. I think being in LA, there's just a lot of younger people in West Hollywood where I practice. Most of my clients, I would say 20 to 35. I work with a lot of women and on dating and
So can you
dating
tell us like kind of what are kind of they come in for?
Well, a lot of depression, anxiety, but also some trauma. So like you said, there's like these 2 pools of experiences that I work with a lot. The trauma, problematic, I have an issue, or I have this thing I want to work on accepting myself for, or, you know, growth related things. So sometimes I work with people that have a kink or fetish, and a lot of times it's just about how do I make that work with my life? How do I become more accepting with it, or not violate people by not being honest with them about the things that I'm interested in or the things that I do. I work with sex workers, so people that maybe were previously sex workers, and in this town, you know, the adult industry is huge, so the people that do or have done some type of work in that industry, it's a very big group of people. And there's a lot of issues that come from that industry, but also a lot of just self-acceptance, and work with people that maybe don't have a problem that they did porn in the past, but they want to move forward in their life, and how do they do that authentically and with a positive view of themselves.
Nice.
When did you discover you had this passion and this purpose?
From a really young age. So I was always really involved with feminist studies. I mean, as an adolescent, like I would walk around with like true crime because I was always interested in human behavior, like the dark side of human behavior, and then also feminist and sexuality books. So I was, you know, talking a lot about Gloria Steinem and, you know, a lot of the 90s feminist riot girl literature at the same time, and zines, very big in the 90s. And then also I was really interested in the serial killer stuff and all the macabre things. So that combination of just study of human behavior from a very young age kind of led more to how can I use that to help people and do something interesting and feel of purpose in the world. And this is something that's really fulfilling to me.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I know it's a really tough question, but if you were to distill down some of the lessons that you've learned and that you now maybe teach to folks, how would you distill those things down? I think of things like self-love and self-forgiveness, but for you, what would you say those top lessons have been?
I think top lessons for me personally, like in both my personal and professional life, and especially living in the city that is very different from living other places, the concept of happiness, I think we can really prevent ourselves from being truly happy when there's a sense of entitlement, or our perception of what we deserve is higher than or different than the life we live. So if we are expecting a different life than the one that we have, we're never going to be happy. So it's about accepting and changing perception and being very aware of privilege and entitlement. Yeah.
It's all the same. It's interesting. It's all the same work. It doesn't matter what the title is. Truth is truth. Inner work is inner work. And so it's so fascinating. But thank you so much for all your work that you do. I'm sure it's sex is an important part of our lives.
Well, sexuality is part of everything that we
Yeah.
do. So it's not just sex, because sex itself, like penetrative intercourse, is an act. Right, it's a behavior that we do, but all the things around it, of how we see the world and how we sexualize things, or how our sexuality or sexual identity affects how we take in and give information, that's a huge part of the world. So it's so important to be aware of it.
One quick question. Does your job and your role as a sex therapist and as a traditional therapist affect your dating relationship life?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Oh my God.
Well, as a therapist, first of all, if I go on a date, it's like doing an intake with like, so where are you from? What's your background? What kind of traumas have you experienced? How have you worked on these things? So it's already like being a therapist impacts those things. But then being a sex therapist, and it's interesting that, you know, and I can say this because I typically date men. So when I've had men in front of me and I've talked about sexuality in an academic or conceptual philosophical way, you know, I study sexuality, this is what I do with clients, this is what I talk about, that can become sexualized. So they might assume that I'm hypersexual, or that I want to do certain things, and that's just really not the case. That's separate from what I do, because we don't think about that with other jobs. Just because you guys talk on TV doesn't mean that when you go on a date or when you're sexual with somebody, you're going to want to interview them. And,
it's true.
and maybe you do. So I think the misconception about sexualizing sexuality, you don't always have to sexualize a sexual topic. You can discuss it as with any other topic. So I think on dating situations and things like that, I think there's misconceptions about what that means. So it's really important to remember, you know, not to sexualize everything all the time. I actually had a conversation with a group of friends this past week, and there was one guy at the table, and I said, you know, it's really unfortunate when we talk about these sexual topics that we sexualize them and you get turned on by them, but I'm just talking about it as a topic, not about my experience or my desires, just about culture, a cultural experience. And of course, the one guy at the table wrote me a direct message afterwards and was like, hey, let's hang out soon. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you were aroused or interested in what I was saying, and you thought that was a green light for us to get together, and it's not happening. So
so interesting. Well, tell people where they can find you. And
so you can find me Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Dr. Amie Harwick. It's Dr. A-M-I-E, that's how you spell my name, Harwick. My website is really just like an online business card, so not very exciting. But yeah, mostly Instagram. I share a lot of mental health tips and things like that. I'm in private practice here in West Hollywood. And then I'm the author of the New Sex Bible for Women, which is a great, just all-encompassing general book about women's sexuality and kind of where to explore and where to go from there.
And the book is available on Amazon, I checked.
Amazon and all the major bookstores. Yeah, it's the New Sex Bible, but it's not a Bible, so don't look in the Bible section, look in the sexuality section. Sometimes I see people put that there as a joke.
And if it doesn't work, you can go into the Bible section.
Right.
Just kidding. Stay tuned, you guys. We'll be right back.